Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar. My name is Rhiannon Staples. I lead the Sapiens Decision Marketing team, and I'm glad that all of you had the chance to join us today. I'm glad to see that so many of you took the time from your schedules to dial in. Thanks for joining us on time. A few housekeeping items to get started. The conference line has been placed in listen-only mode, and if you'd like to ask a question, please click the chat option on the toolbar and type your question into the conference organizers. We will have dedicated time at the end of this call for questions. Our webinar is available as a streamed audio broadcast, and if you'd like to attend via teleconference, please refer to today's session reminder for global dial-ins. Before we begin, I'd like to take a brief moment to welcome our presenter today, Larry Goldberg. Many of you know Larry, and he's the co-founder of Knowledge Partners International and a pioneer in the field of decision management. As the co-inventor of the decision model and co-author of the book with Barbara Van Halla, he's literally written the book that changed the way that businesses think about business logic. As all of you on the call are aware, KPI was acquired by Sapiens a few weeks ago, and we couldn't be happier about welcoming Larry to the Sapiens Decision Leadership Team. We're excited about the strategic contributions he will make in the company and in the decision management space in the months and years ahead. Welcome, Larry, and without further delay, I'd like to turn the session over to you.
Thanks very much, Rhiannon. So welcome, everybody. Thanks for taking your time. We're having a beautiful, beautiful, sunny, cool day. Most amazing summer we're having here in Cary, North Carolina. I hope you're all enjoying the same, and thanks for joining me on this day. So I'd like to start by introducing Sapiens, my new home. Some of you, as many of you may know, I was with Sapiens before. I joined them 10 years ago and was with them for 4 extremely happy years. I'm looking forward to many more happy years with them. Sapiens is a leading global provider of software solutions. They have over 130 customers globally, all global organizations, large financial and insurance companies and other companies. They're traded on the NASDAQ and on the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange. They're a global company with offices in North America, UK, Europe, and Asia Pacific. Have over 900 financial services and technology experts. Their revenues are approaching 155 million this year, and they're a very cash-rich and financially profitable company. So, enough of the advertising. Let's get down to the agenda. So the agenda today is I'm going to talk about the decision model, principally in relation to DMM and the future of the decision model and the future of decision modeling in general. I'm going to talk about the evolution of the decision model. I'm going to talk about a new model, which we call the event model. And we're going to talk about what we, KPI, have learned as part of this evolution that we're enjoying, and I'll talk about some of these lessons that we've learned and how we see these lessons informing our future. So if there's anything I've missed and anything else you want to hear about, just send in your questions, and as you'll see at the end, we feel free to call on me to talk with you further. So I'm available to you at any time for dialogue. So I want to start by talking about the implications of the merger of Sapiens and KPI, which we promised to talk about on this meeting. So you all know, I hope you all know about KPI. We're a company that's involved in research development on methodology and on technology. Our focus is on the decision model, TDM, and a new model that you may have heard about recently and that we're talking about now, the event model, TEM. Sapiens is a company that I've given you a little bit of background on. They're a technology, research, development company with global support and reach. Our new company, Sapiens Decision Solutions, which is a subsidiary of Sapiens International, has been formed out of the acquisition of KPI by Sapiens and incorporates all of Sapiens' decision activities and all of KPI's activities. So we're going to incorporate all of KPI's activities, and that includes TDM, includes TEM, and includes our Quick Step Enterprise Agile methodology. We're going to continue to support and extend the success of our other KPI TDM licensees. And we're going to encourage their success in the marketplace and support their success in the marketplace. And we're going to capitalize on the success thus far of Sapiens Decision, Sapiens Decision Solutions flagship product, as the first enterprise decision management tool. And we're going to continue KPI's role in the DMN, in the OMG DMN submission team. And we're going to continue advancing research on these exciting subjects, TDM, TM, Quickstep, and our other research projects. Barbara and I have both joined Sapiens Decision Solutions as evangelists, and you'll be hearing a lot from us. And I'm taking on a full-time management role. I'm going to own the product called Decision and some of the other products that KPI brought along with us, including Quickstep and TEM. So for us, it's business as usual, except I think we're on a stronger base, a deeper base, and I hope we will continue to deliver a value to for all our clients now and into the future. So
Larry,
let's move.
Shannon, if I can
Yes.
interrupt you for a moment, we're still seeing the lead slide on the presentation.
Really? Still seeing it now?
You're still on the lead slide.
Well, let me pause and restart my screen.
End of slide now, Larry. I think we're caught up.
Well, it's interesting because so you have an agenda on the screen now,
We do?
and now do you have the merger of Sapiens and KPI?
Not.
Okay. Do you have history of decision?
We do not.
So Rhiannon, there's some sort of problem. I'm going to close my video.
To those of you on the call, our apologies for the delay.
And are you back to, is the slide changing yet?
No? Still at the agenda slide.
All right. So clearly we're having a problem with the process. So what I would ask is that
If you want to continue presenting, Larry, we can try and figure out, I have a copy of your deck as well, we can try and get that loaded up while you're continuing with the conversation, and I'll try and catch up to you with the slides if I can.
sure. So my recommendation is Mike bring up the slides and show his slides. Maybe that'll help the problem. Sorry about this, folks. So let me talk about the history of decision management in general, and just take a quick timeline of how we got to where we are and what is happening in the industry. And really, you have to go back to 1999 to see the first outline of decision management evolving when Barbara van Halle, as the owner and the founder of Knowledge Partners, started linking business motivation, business process, and business rules together to try and come up with some sort of theory, some sort of theory to put these pieces together. And I think that was really the antecedent of what became the decision model. In 2001, Corticon started talking about decision services in their product, in their business rules product, where they would gather rules under a single umbrella and call that a decision service. And then in 2002, Barbara published her book, Business Rules Applied, and in that book, she talked about the gathering of business rules within a given point in a business process. And while these were not called decisions, they were definitely decision structures. In 2005, Fair Isaac started talking about enterprise decision management and how to approach decision making under this umbrella of enterprise decision management. And then that same year, Oracle provided decision services as a methodology of implementing business rules. And in 2006, iLog started talking about transparent decision services. And in that same year, KPI, Barbara and I in partnership, started experimenting with the decision model in actual client implementations where we were taking our theory and trying the theory of the decision model in actual implementations as we were preparing our book. So by 2007, James Taylor and Neil Radin published their book Smart Enough Systems, where they proposed enterprise decision management as a solution, as a management solution. And in that same year, the Business Rule Forum started a decision management series, a symposia around the subject of decision management. And in that year, James Taylor and I actually visited the OMG, an OMG technical meeting, and presented on the theory of decision management. And that meeting was the spark that lit decision DMN, and the process of orienting OMG towards decision management began. How are we doing on the slides, Rhiannon?
Everyone can see the slides, Larry.
Oh, great. So we're on slide 6, right? And in 2008, Barbara and I published the Decision Model, a framework for business logic and business-driven SOA. Actually, it wasn't called that. It was but that was the original title, I guess. And BPM Institute implemented their Business Decision Management Conference Series, and so we began to see the publication of serious decision management material. In that same year, KPI published the Business Decision Maturity Model, of which more later. And in 2011, we saw the beginning of enterprise-level, enterprise-scale decision management implementations. In that same year, OMG held a decision day when many of the decision model pioneers met together to share their discoveries with each other and to talk about OMG's participation in this movement, and that led directly to the release of OMG's RFP for the DMN. And in that same year, Decision was launched by Sapiens, the first enterprise decision management tool. And here we are in 2014, and we're about to see in the next couple of months the release of DMN version 1. And so so that's really the timeline we're looking at. You see we're a very young industry. We're climbing up the hype cycle according to Gartner, who has recognized the importance of this industry and the importance of what it brings to business management. Now we're going to slide 7.
So Larry, you're controlling the slides at this point.
Oh, excellent. Thank you. And you're seeing them and they're advancing?
You're looking at the coalescing of forces.
Great. So I'm going to actually turn on my video. Hopefully I won't kill this slide. So DMN. So what is DMN? Decision Management and Notation. It's designed to be the third specification in a trilogy. And that trilogy is BPMN 2.0, Business Process Model and Notation, CMMN 1.0, Case Management Model and Notation, and DMN, Decision Model and Notation. And the state of DMN is that it's currently in, the released version is beta 1. The plan is that sometime later this year, very shortly, there will be a release of DMN 1.0, and it may actually fall into next year, but very shortly DMN 1.0 will be released. The specifications of each of these models are designed to be complementary with one another, and they are to a large degree. DMN contains a new expression language called FEEL, which is which is an acronym really that stands for Fairly Easy Expression Language. It's a core feature of DMN, and that Fairly Easy Expression Language is meant to be an expression language that can be shared across these models, or the ambition is to share it across these models as a general expression language to be used for these models, which somewhat indicates to me at least that these models are not entirely business-oriented, but we'll talk about that in due course. And right now, DMN as it is released has 3 levels of conformance. Level 1 is notation and interchange. Level 2, notation, interchange, and a subset of FEEL expressions, what they call simple FEEL, S-FEEL. And level 3 is meant to be notation, interchange, and a full implementation of FEEL. So that's the current state of DMN. So let's look at DMN. Let's look, this is a publication of OMG's. This is from a slide presentation that OMG did when they introduced Beta 1. At the top of the slide you can see the model representation, the model notation of DMN. The square boxes are meant to be decisions. The box-like structures that connected to those decisions are called business knowledge models. And the rounded shape is meant to be data source. The business knowledge models represent the underlying what they call boxed expressions or decision tables, or other types of logic, and these expressions can be done in some visual form, such as a 2-dimensional table, or can be expressed in a FEEL expression, and these FEEL expressions are a direct analog of these decision tables. So this is a very high-level view of DMN, and in DMN we have as I've said, we have 3 levels of conformance. At conformance level 1, the tool or the vendor is expected to comply with the notation, that is to say these shapes that you see and connections that you see at the top, as well as the interchange, the ability to exchange between tools. So that would mean compliance with the meta model and compliance with the structures. In addition, at level 2, there would have to be a subset of FEEL expressions for representation of some of the logic. At conformance level 3, there would have to be a full implementation of the FEEL expression. So right now, DMN does not restrict the use of any logic in the business knowledge models. They can be any form of logic as long as that logic may be expressed in a FEEL expression and or one of the types of tables that DMN recognizes. And that is not yet finalized, but approximately 4 types of tables, and those types of tables are defined by DMN. So that's roughly what DMN looks like, how DMN is represented, and what DMN is about. Now, what is the difference? What is the difference between TDM and DMN? So, TDM and DMN are not analogous. TDM is a model of logic. It is a specific model of logic that prescribes the logical structures. It has a set of rigorous principles that define the model. It has a theory of normalization that is based upon those principles. And while it may be represented in different notation styles, the default notation style is that which is prescribed and represented in the decision model book. But the key component of the decision model is the 15 principles upon which it's based and the theory of normalization that lead to the structure, that lead to the very stable structures that are part of the decision model. What is DMN? Well, DMN is a meta model, a notation, and an expression language. It's a combination of those things. It does not prescribe a model of logic. You can incorporate any kind of logic that you feel fit to incorporate. The DMN specification at present requires only that that logic resolves. So as long as it can resolve and can be tested to resolve, then it's up to the author as to what logic they use, what form of logic they use, and how that logic is structured together. Now, there are prescribed several types of decision tables. None of these are rule families, but it does allow other expressions and representations of logic, so long as those representations can be resolved to field expressions. Then any logical structure is permissible. But it does provide a meta model and notation to represent that model and that expression language for the purposes of interchange. So for those, so everybody can see that you could take a TDM model and express it in a DMN notation and a DMN expression language. And so from our perspective, from Sapiens and KPI's perspective, we see no conflict between DMN and TDM. We see that TDM is simply one approach to DMN, and there are other approaches, of course, and I'll talk about those in a moment. But there is no reason why TDM should not and cannot and will not conform with DMN, although it is not clear that DMN will conform with TDM. In fact, it's probable that many DMN drawn structures will not conform with TDM. I'll talk about that in just a moment. So that's the difference between TDM and DMN. In short, TDM is a model of logic. DMN is a meta model with specific notation and an expression language. So currently, DMN-like notation can be created in decision using the context diagram feature of decision. Now I'm talking directly to the issue of what about decision DMN. So what we've announced is that decision will provide DMN conformance shortly after the release of DMN specification. It is to no purpose to actually try and conform at this point until we have a final DMN specification. As one of the contributors to the specification, I've seen the change and the morphing of the specification from version to version, and so we're holding our powder until we have a final specification, and once we have a final specification, we will, of course, provide conformance to the DMN specification, both at the meta model level and at the notation level, and ultimately at the interchange level. So, but like most of all the vendors out there, in fact, almost all the vendors out there, if not all, the initial support we'll provide for level 1, notation and interchange. And I guess one of the most important reasons is that it depends really upon the adoption of field in the industry as we consider the higher levels of conformance and the utility of those higher levels of conformance. So what we've seen is from all the announcements and of the releases so far, the conformance currently is limited to level 1, There's some degree of conformance to level 2, but at the moment the conformance is at level 1, which allows the building of graphs, decision model graphs, and ultimately the interchange of those graphs, and potentially decision tables as well. But our policy is, and our strategic direction is to conform with DMN and provide full conformance to DMN in line with the industry. Now, the question for us, and as the question proposed for us, as you see in the earlier slide, is what do we do to structures that do not conform to the decision model? So if we're going to have an interchange between decision and another tool, what do we do when we receive structures that do not comply to the decision model? There are two strategies available to us. The one strategy is to resolve those structures into decision model structures, into rule family structures, and or represent those external structures in a field expression, a standalone field expression, or in decision speak, if you like, a function. And we will explore both of those options. Obviously, the reverse direction is not a problem. Once we export to another tool, we can export a standard model, a standard notated model, and we can provide a decision table we can transform our rule family to a decision table in DMN format without any difficulty at all. So the biggest question for us is for those DMN models that are created using DMN tools that do not comply with decision models, and we would probably treat those as functions, either using the field expression language or simply using our own functional notation as it exists today. So those are the kinds of strategies we're looking at. I'm sure the rest of the industry are also facing the same issues with their own tooling, but as the industry coalesces around the standard, I think we'll see that happening, just as we did in the BPM 2.0 with those standards that were with those tools that were at variance to those standards. So let's look at a worked example of what a TDM model may look like in DMN. This is a model. It's a worked model from a client, and this model is called Current Account Closure Simulation. It's from banking. It's from the banking industry. It's the logic or simplified logic around when account may be closed. And this is a classic decision model. You'll see it's not very large, not that complex either, and it involves all the logic around what happens when we have to determine whether we can close an account or why we can or cannot close an account. So if we look at this model, we see immediately one of the opportunities for us in DMN. We see that the model, the way it is worded in decision using the rigor of the decision model glossary, we see it's not that easy to read at a high level. If we notate it with these labels, it's much easier to understand what's going on at a glance. And here is an immediate opportunity in using DMN. In fact, if we represent this particular model in DMN using aliases or short names for the fact types, we see a much simpler representation of this decision using DMN. And so here immediately is an opportunity for TDM users to take some advantage of DMN and do some simple representation of DMN. And we see already the emergence of tools that allow us to do a very quick and easy graphing of our decision, high-level decision, using a simple drawing tool. And this is indicative of the kind of evolution that we can use DMN for in our TDM tools. So if we look at, however, a more detailed view of the TDM, of DMN for this particular decision, we see it kind of gets a little bit busier, and this is not complete, this is partially complete, as we start adding business knowledge models to the decision, and we start adding data sources to the decision. So in looking at this, one of the thoughts is to simplify the approach and to clarify the approach using DMN standards and using DMN facilities. And so this is a different representation. This is a more detailed representation using a DMN notation. Here, those practitioners of DMN will see that we've taken a slightly different approach to data sources. And here we're using the full fact types as provided in our glossary. We're not using a short name or a screen name for the fact types in our glossary. We're using a full name, and so we've moved the data sources into the decisions as provided for in the specification. So the specification permits us to do that. We have added some pieces to the notation, the solid lines and the dotted lines, which TDM practitioners will recognize. We think that it adds a lot of value to the decision, and so we do that, and that would obviously be an addition to DMN, an improvement to DMN. We have also added the source documents to this diagram. We've left the source document, the source policy sources showing in this document, and we think that that's a neat addition in the DMN notation, and we see that as a great addition to TDM notation. So this would be closer to the spirit of TDM, although there's absolutely no reason for us not to have the capability of showing the screen name or the short name as in the earlier diagram, and we think that that would be a nice addition to TDM, and so it would be a good use of DMN notation. And so this is just a zoom into a piece of that decision, showing the full implementation of the notation. So in this format, the notation would be very consistent with the spirit of TDM. What we see here is the addition of the policy sources, which we think would be a great addition anyway to the TDM notation, and we would probably want to maintain that. But the representation would be very comfortable for a TDM practitioner as it is presented in DMN, and this would be very close to the kind of representation we see for the DMN view of a TDM model going forward. Again, we do not use business knowledge models. We see, because TDM restricts the use within a particular rule family, or as they call sub-decisions, or lower decisions, or simply decisions in DMN, because we do not use multiple rule families within such a structure, we would only ever use one rule family. We deprecate the use of business knowledge models as complicating and unnecessary. We can simply use a single decision to represent a single rule family, simplifying the model quite significantly. And there's no reason why we would not be able to use views, the view name namespace for our views, And so we see this as a relatively good representation of DMN for TDM. But we're still exploring how we are going to implement DMN, and we're very open for conversation. We're talking to our customers right now about their views. We're looking around the industry to understand the value to the customer of some of the pieces of DMN, and we will certainly implement the highest values that we can in our representations. We will not lose the TDM notation. We will maintain the TDM notation. There's a lot of value in that, but we will have probably some method of looking at a DMN representation of our logic as we do a TDM representation of our logic. Interestingly enough, there's nothing to stop a user of decision representing creating a DMN model using the context diagram, which is probably an ideal venue for creating their DMN models right now. So there's no reason not to actually build DMN models or show DMN models using this notation today. So that covers, I think, our view of the relationship between DMN and TDM. We see the role of DMN as a notation, a lingua franca, if you like, for requirements development. And we see the development, and we've seen that we see that right now, of so-called sketching tools, tools that allow the sketching of a DMN decision, simplifying and supporting process design and business rule design, and enabling people to maintain requirements traceability to their systems. And we see those tools already on the market. We see people using those tools. We think that performs a valuable addition to the armory, and so we think that that's a great use of DMN. We see DMN as a business rule management tool, helping organize business rules to reduce complexity, and we see a lot of the business rule management vendors who have business rules engines using DMN to help organize their business rules to help reduce the complexity of managing large bodies of rules, and we think DMN plays a very powerful role in that regard. For the interchange between tools, you know, the industry's had many interchange tools available to it. We have PRRL, we have RIF, we have several standards have already been proposed. The problem in those standards is kind of like having nuclear bombs. You only have them to stop people from using them, and unfortunately, this is the way the industry has gone. There isn't a great deal of interchange going on that I have seen, and that seems to be the universal case. Whether that will change with the use of DMN, I personally doubt. But you know, one never knows. It could, maybe this is the beginning of the golden era. But certainly it could be used for that. We don't see anything in the tools that have come to market to date that would enable that. And so we think it's a little bit down the road. Now, for decision management, to implement and manage a business strategy and to reduce project times and cost, we think it's going to take much more than just a notation and just a meta model. We think it's going to require quite a lot more besides that, and we've seen that in our work with Decision. The ability to implement decisions into different technologies is going to be very important, very crucial, and we think that there's a maturing process that's going to have to take place in DMN to reach the stage that we have reached already TDM. But with the ability to, I think, present TDM in the DMN notation, I think it's going to shorten that cycle time for DMN. So, and that's just my view. I could be wrong. Let me talk briefly about the business decision maturity model. So the business decision maturity model was conceived by Barbara and I, building upon the work done by KPI on the rules maturity model. And we proposed this back when we wrote the book in 2008, chapter 22 I think it was. And it has proved extremely valuable in practice for firms to determine where they are and what the journey was going to have to be, and also determine where they wanted to go in terms of maturity, because it's not clear that every firm needs to or wants to get to the highest level. And we've seen that maturity model at work, very successfully at work in many organizations. And we've seen areas of the industry where we're already at the future. We see that at level 1, we rarely see the sketching tools, and it's really early in the hype cycle, so this is a very good time for those tools to enable people to do this sort of, create this visibility of their decisions and use those tools to create that visibility, and I think that's a very powerful use of those tools. Sketching tools could be as simple as Visio, but it could also be some of the DMN tools coming available on the market today. Very exciting opportunity. Level 2, Agile. Now that's going to require a much steeper learning curve. This is really the land of the pioneers, certainly for DMN and TDM. We support a lot of our clients who are now reaching the point that they're able to build their decisions and have them automatically deployed in their technology. When we get to Align, that is to say when we start seeing rules, decisions being shared across multiple projects, that's the favored few. We are beyond the land of the pioneers. We're in the very favored few. We've seen that very successful in TDM adopters who are using decisions, who are now using decision across multiple projects, and even some that are using it in a corporate-wide role to manage logic from a central place across the enterprise. And there are early reports of great success in that field. And then the ultimate, the autonomic. To be honest, we don't see that implementation having taken place yet. We haven't had reports of that, and that is really a focus as we move into next year for the tool, for the decision tool, building that connection to analytics and being able to use those analytics to inform and update and improve the decisions. So that's really where we are. I think we're all sitting in that 1 and 2 space, and I think that there are those brave souls who have moved beyond that and are earning some pretty big rewards actually at level 3 and level 4. For DMN, I think we're starting fairly early in the cycle. I think that being able to use DMN for TDM will give us an additional fillip in terms of penetration into the market, but we certainly see also a wider level of adoption, a broader level of adoption with the introduction of DMN, so we're very excited about that. Let me talk briefly about the event model and why we're working on the event model and why we're excited about the event model. So in a traditional process, most situations can be resolved and represented in traditional process. Business decisions and process give us a lot of flexibility when we have readily available information and when we have repeatable activities. When activities happen on a day-to-day basis, they can be predicted as to the time, the sequence, and the logic can be easily managed in a given point in time. It can be applied. So this is an example of the kind of stuff that we do very well with today using our case management tools, our process management tools, and our decision modeling tools, decision management tools. So this example is a check presented on an account without funds to cover it. The process and decision model can handle that situation because the information is all accessible to the process. However, what do we do when we get a situation that's a little bit more complicated? So when we think about a bank that may have a rule that says a suspicious account is detected whenever there are at least 3 big cash deposits followed by transfers abroad in the last 15 days. I'm giving what is a simplified example, but every deposit process has to take this into account. But conventional case, process, and decision management tools do not fully represent this case. It is very difficult to represent this case. In fact, in general, when we think about events, we can break them down really to what are called the 4 Ds: detect, derive, decide, and do, as you see on the screen here. Detect and derive talks about event management where, you know, we're asking the questions, did something happen? Can we identify that something happened? Have we got a pattern that we can match? Is there a period of time in which certain things occurred in a certain way? And if that's true, then we can do a decision, then we can make a decision and actually do what we want to do. And what I've done is done a very sort of broad brush separation of the responsibilities of these 4 Ds. So detect and derive really lives in what we call the event model space, detecting that something happens and deriving knowledge from that event happening. And then once we've determined that something happened and derived that information, we have the information necessary to make a determination using TDM or DMN and deciding what we should do about it. And there we are living in the realm of process. So that's really the role of TDM, awareness. Once we have determined the situation, then we're in the reaction mode and we can use the tools that we've become so adept at. So in TDM terms, an event is an occurrence of something that may happen, will happen, or has happened that is of business interest and is published. So we have a taxonomy for that. We understand a lot about that. The problem is representing that in a way that actually is very clear to the business and that can be implemented by technology. And so that, when we have that kind of problem, we're living in the realm of the kinds of models that we have been so successful with in TDM. And here we're showing, because we don't have time to actually go through the model in great detail, here we're showing a representation of what an event model looks like, one of the notation forms that we have come up with in the event model that we're building. So here we see the model level at the top of the screen. I hope you can see my cursor. For those who are decision modelers out there, TDM modelers out there, they'll recognize, they'll somewhat recognize the structures, and I think they'll understand a lot about what's happening in the structure. And at the bottom of the screen, you'll see, in this particular case, large cash deposit, which is this model here, this model in the bottom left-hand corner, and how we express that in tabular form, and how we express the logic in tabular form. And I think you will see how much more complex it is than TDM and how we've grappled with those problems and how we've resolved those problems of identifying it. And you'll see, of course, that this is going to require a much richer glossary than the glossary we use for decision modeling. So that's an exciting opportunity coming, and it's very close. We see that coming we see that happening in the coming year. We see us rolling that out. We see we are already talking with some clients about testing the model, as we did with the decision model early in 2007. So today we govern most of our events through program code, and we hope in due course to be govern those events through the event model. And for those who actually had their hands in event management, I think they can see the significant advantage that this brings to event management, just as we brought those significant advantages to business rules management when we went to TDM and the decision management. So I'd like to briefly talk about what we have learned from TDM in the last 5 years. And this is from Barbara's article in this month's Modern Analyst. It's available today at Modern Analyst. Barbara and Fabiana Fournier. Fabiana was one of the IBM team that we partnered with in building the event model. And Fabiana and Barbara have written sort of an article talking about the event model. It's extremely interesting. And they came up with 5 lessons learned, which I'd like to actually spend a few minutes about, because it really is it really very well describes what we've been about in the last 5 years with decision and the decision model. So what we've learned is, firstly, that a predefined technology-independent model has proved to be valuable. It represents a vision first and supporting technology to follow. So everybody who's adopted decision and the other tools that are available in the TDM space really understand the value of that statement, that the method comes first, technology-independent model comes first, but technology comes afterwards. Second, a business-friendly structure also has value in separating business representation from technology-specific representation. Specifically, a top-down structural diagram supported by corresponding logic tables have proven to be intuitive and understandable by business people. And in that, I think DMN plays a very valuable role. Thirdly, underlying principles behind the decision models, behind the models, are valuable because they prescribe the structure. They force us they limit the freedom, the degrees of freedom, and they prescribe the structure. That keeps it simple, keeps it technology independent, and defines the optimum integrity of the content within the structure. Most importantly, they also provide the means for model validation. And so the ability to test those models accurately and create automatically create the test cases, very valuable capability. And fourth, a solid theoretical foundation of normalization is valuable, so that the business user doesn't have to guess the best representation of that logic. The technical user doesn't have to guess the best representation of that model or come up with their own painting. The painting is done by numbers. It reduces the content of each model to its minimal representation, which saves overhead and reduces error of future maintenance. And finally, model-driven code generation is not only good, it opens the doors to many advantages. The holy grail is to generate code directly from the model so that non-technical people can create the models, at least understand them, possibly validate them against principles with test cases, and IT can deploy them to target technologies. And those clients of decision who are using decision know what I'm talking about and understand the value of that. But we have seen the value of that, and it significantly closes the gap between business and IT. So that really is a summary of where I wanted to go. We have a lot of stuff on our website. Please come and get it. Get them on. Get our client case studies. Feel free to call us at 919-405-1507. Ask Daphne. We can arrange a lunch and learn for you at your own site or by the web directly to talk to your requirements. And so we look forward to hearing from you and speaking to you. So at that point, I'll stop and take any questions that you may have. Rhiannon, do you have any questions for us?
Thank you, Larry. Yes, we did get a number of questions that were submitted during the presentation, and also some during the registration process. So thank you for those questions. We'll talk through some of them. If you are interested in asking a question, please use the chat function in the toolbar and chat us your question. We'll do our best to get to all of them, but there are quite a number that we've got to get through. If we don't directly answer your question on today's call, we'll be sure to follow up with you. Larry, one of the questions that was presented was a question about the acquisition and its impact on the patent situation. Can you speak to that?
Sure. So Sapiens Decision Solutions have exactly the same stance as far as the patent is concerned as KPI, and will continue the policy of KPI. And so those users who want to use the decision model for their own business, very free to do so. If you have any concerns about doing so, there's a self-licensing process on our website. It's currently at thedecisionmodel.com or kpiusa.com. In due course, it'll be on the Sapiens Decision website. But we have exactly the same policy. If you want to build technology and sell it for a profit using TDM, feel free to contact us and we can talk to you about that opportunity.
Larry. Another question that was presented was how to make the value proposition easier to explain to senior execs.
Well, tell you what, if you can tell me the answer. No, I seriously, we have done that a lot in recent years. But, and we have some great case studies. It's very simple. It's going to reduce the cost of building requirements. It's going to build better requirements, and it's going to reduce the cost of implementation. And I have, in fact, I have case studies and proof points for every one of those statements. And if you're in the business rules business, it's going to dramatically simplify the management of your rules over time. It's going to reduce the cost of those management rules over time, and on and on. So we'd be happy to share with you case studies that you can share with your management, but it is simple enough to build this into a very simple, one-page or a two-pager. Feel free to contact me, and I can provide you those for your particular, help you provide those for your organization.
Great, thank you. And I have seen a couple of questions come in with regard to today's webinar. Was it recorded? The answer is yes. We will make this recording available after today's event for the number of folks that did ask that question. Larry, one of the other questions that came in was a question about the difference between business rules engines and business rules decision management software. Can you speak to that?
Yes, so business rules engines they're execution time tools. They're there to execute business rules. Business rule management tools are there for businesses to discover their requirements and build requirements around their business logic that they're using in their business processes and in their case and in their business case tools, and manage those over time, and then using those decisions, implement those into business rules engines. I think that's the high-level concept. So business rule decision management tools are really requirements tools. They manage requirements for the business, and they implement those requirements into business rules engines. Some business rules engines have rule management capability, but some of them also have decision management capability. My own experience is that when technology people build decision management tools, they tend to be very technical. That's just been my experience.
Okay, thanks, Larry. How do you use decision modeling to drive identification of requirements?
Well, decision modeling is, decision models are first-class citizens of the requirement citizenry. When we build requirements, and we have a whole requirement methodology called QuickStep, and we've been doing requirements for years now, this is our core competency, we do not build requirements by building narrative, shell statements. We build requirements specifically out of models that business people can look at and say, yes, that's what I want, that's how I want it to do. And those models go to full-fledged operating screens, UIs. So, but the value of the decision model as a requirement is that business people can look at it and can accurately depict the logic that they want to go into their business systems and manage them, because the decision model is meant to be and does represent logic at a business user's level of language and syntax.
Great. Well, thank you, Larry. And it looks like that's the last question we had time for today. We're at the top of the hour now. So I'd once again like to thank everyone for attending our seminar today. I hope that you found it interesting and informative. As Larry mentioned, if you have additional questions, would like to schedule a lunch and learn, or would like a copy of the slides, please contact us by phone by 919-405-1500 or by visiting us on the web at sapiensdecision.com. Thank you.
Thank you.